Right, so we're doing a quick transition for our afternoon panel, Targeted Economic Security Programs, which will discuss ABLE accounts, emergency savings, the federal savers match, and the student loan match. What all of these things have in common is what we just touched upon in Teresa's talk as well, is that there are all of these other pressures that people have, whether it's an emergency event, whether it's student loans that they have accumulated, and employers and the federal government has put in place programs to try to support economic savings programs that address specific challenges. And so our panel today, moderated by Kent Johnson, who is the program manager at the Financial Empowerment Center here at the Evelyn K. Davis Center, will talk about how these programs work and how potentially they could support retirement security as people go through their earlier ages of, coming off of college and paying off student debt and looking at challenges with childcare. We talk about childcare in the planning meeting a lot as a huge expense in the early years of young professionals. Just some of the topics that the panel will touch on.
Okay, glad to be here. Looks like we lost half of our audience. Hopefully they'll be back soon.
They're all online.
Yes, exactly. Honored to be here. I've got to say selfishly that my 91-year-old mother who lives alone on the farm will be thrilled to know that I'm speaking in front of all of you, including Senator Tom Harkin. And so it's just a thrill to be here and be amongst panelists that have a lot of valuable information to share. So we're going to dive right in and just do introductions, and we'll just start at the end with you, Alicia.
Hi, I'm Alicia Callanan. I work for the state treasurer in Iowa. Here to talk about ABLE accounts. Underneath me, I have ABLE 529 education plans and then our unclaimed property, but really diving into ABLE and what it means and can benefit everyone.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Scott. I work for the Pew Charitable Trust, which is a research and policy nonprofit based in Washington, D.C., and I direct the retirement savings work at Pew.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Soa. I'm from Candidly. We're a financial wellness provider that helps employers provide their employees with benefits to help them manage their entire spectrum of financial education and education finance, from managing student debt to upskilling your workforce to helping them manage the gap between student loans and retirement. I do love to start with a fun fact. So I am from Chicago. I married a woman from Indiana. So I know there were some jabs thrown at the I-states earlier. I promise not to dive into that, though if there's anyone from Idaho in the room, I think we got a hat trick and we can jump into it. But I'm really excited to be here today, not just for the work that the Harkin Institute does, but here today at a university, like many other universities around the country, which in 4 to 6 weeks, a quarter of the students will soon be donning caps and gowns and leaving these protective halls to go out into the workforce, many of whom had to pay for that amazing education with debt, and talk about how that can create a gap in their long-term outcomes. So really excited to dive into that as we go forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sid Pila. I'm the founder and CEO of Sunny Day Fund. Sunny Day Fund powers financial health for all by automating emergency savings, first-time home buying savings accounts, and other capabilities. Our idea is pretty simple. It's almost the exact opposite of what Professor was just talking about, which is we know that in order for people to be able to save up for retirement, you need a solid foundation of emergency savings and, well, in general, a cash that you can count on when you need it so that you are in a very secure mindset and be able to save up for that future. And we're thrilled to be here in Iowa and grateful to be at the Harkin Institute. And I'll also be talking about a unique program later on today that we're going to be doing with Iowa's Health and Human Services.
Okay, very good. So with that in mind, Sid, you're first. Tell us about your role of emergency savings programs and how these programs support financial education.
Absolutely. I think there was several billions and trillions of dollars that were tossed around earlier. So I'm going to just frame it a little bit differently, right? So the retirement savings world, the DC world, if you will, call it, is roughly $45 trillion in the US. And that is essentially addressing about 170 million working Americans. Now, what we know for a fact is that not just folks who don't have access to those savings, but also the other side, which is roughly 3 in 5 working Americans don't have $2,000 of cash on hand to handle financial emergencies. Now, this is, to use what Chantel was talking about earlier, a bit of a trick, right? How can someone who says, an Uber driver who says that they can't handle a $1,000 emergency, how can we convince that individual to save up for the far future when, again, they feel economically starved immediately for their car breaking down and income loss as a result of that? So, and what has been thought about previously is that the concept of emergency savings is going to cannibalize the contributions that would be going into retirement. So like somehow, this dollar is going to steal away from the future. But what the data has continuously shown is that that's not what's happening. That airline that Teresa had mentioned earlier, when they also rolled out an emergency savings program, they actually saw a 23% bump in their retirement plan contributions, that they actually saw a pretty steep decline on those retirement plan withdrawals, and whether through loans or early withdrawals. And in general, people felt better about their own personal financial security. So when we are focused on helping individuals save directly from their paycheck into a brand new savings account, and ideally have the employer contribute some dollars along the way, what we're fundamentally doing is providing immediate peace of mind so that they are able to address their far financial future.
Okay, thank you, Sid. Michael, how does the student loan match work with retirement savings programs?
Thank you, Ken. And maybe to jump into that, I'll frame the problem a little bit, because I think really what we're talking about is, we've heard this a few times, the retirement gap, the savings gap. There's a difference between individuals, whether they're where they should be or where they are compared to many of their peers. And let's look at that from a student debt perspective. 79% of student debt borrowers say their student debt is holding them back from saving for retirement. In fact, 1 out of every 4 of those individuals say their student debt is stopping them from saving at all. And then when they do save, recent studies and recent analysis that we've worked on with a couple other peers in the industry have shown that they're still saving 1 to 2% or deferring 1 to 2% less of their salary because of that. Ultimately, what this translates into is individuals who have or have had student debt, on average, have retirement balances that are 36% lower than their non-borrowing peer or non-borrowing colleague. And that's a huge gap. But it's a gap that's not just a focus on those with student debt, because unfortunately student debt has high correlations of other areas of the retirement gap that we're also very focused on. Women are 20% more likely to take on student loans than men. Persons of color typically take on balances 19 to 25% higher than non-persons of color. So it's a part of the retirement problem that is correlated all throughout the industry. When we look at the total amount of individuals with student debt in the United States, it's 43 million Americans. That's $1.8 trillion in student debt, which ranks right up there with mortgages, credit cards. It's in the top 3. But it's one of the forms of debt that has some of the longest term impacts on an individual. Now, I did make a little bit of a fallacy earlier, pointing out where we are and the young individuals, because it is a common misconception that student debt is a young person's problem. Well, I'm here to tell you right now that 45% of that 1.8 trillion are held by individuals 40 years of age and older. In fact, the highest average balance are between the 35 and 40-year-old population, right around $43,000. It's not a young individual. Student debt is a parent's problem, a grandparent's problem, impacting a wide range of the population. And if you look at what's happening now, some of the more concerning trends that have been currently happening around delinquencies and defaults, going back to during COVID, of course, there was the moratorium on student debt payments, and we have now entered back into the time of repayment, but it's been a very bumpy ride. People have not gotten back into the habit of paying those student debts, and because of that, we've seen some of the highest default rates and delinquency rates on student debt than we've seen in over a decade. And if you actually look into those numbers even closer, the highest default rates aren't amongst the individuals who are the young, just out of college, just out of school. It's the 40 and 50-year-old plus who have the highest rates of delinquency. Now, there's a bunch of behavioral economists here who are far smarter than me and can probably dive into why that's the case, but all I can give you is a bit of my personal experience. In that 40 to 50 range, I have home payments, I have car payments, I have a lot of other financial responsibilities that I have to take care of, and any new addition just makes it hard. I have kids. Student debt is a personal problem. It's a personal problem that makes it hard for us to make decisions around. And actually going back to something that our keynote just said and talked about shame about thinking about these problems, debt is one of the probably more shameful things that people think about. There was a great survey I read that actually got into what are the topics people are least likely to want to raise their hand and ask for help about. Debt is right up there at the top. 49% of people say they don't want to talk about their debt. That edges out 45% of people saying they don't want to talk about their salary. Those two are higher than other taboo topics such as politics, religion, race, and body weight. So yes, after this, you're more likely to see me being more comfortable talking about my body weight than the amount of debt I hold. And because that people are just concerned about asking for help. That is compounded with what we're seeing right now in the regulatory side of it. Unfortunately, and I will take no political side here, but student debt is the badminton birdie that goes back and forth all the time with constant change, constant manipulations, constant new regulations coming out. Just recently, we saw that there have been massive changes to different IDR programs that are out there and available, notably the SAVE plan being sunsetted. We're seeing removal of safeguards around student debt. We're seeing lowering lifetime limits. All of this to say, it's confusing. That said, there is a positive. The institution, particularly the retirement institution, has seen a lot of improvements in what the institution is trying to do to help support people with student debt. I'll be talking and diving into one of those more deeply, but specifically, like you have student loan employer contributions, which fall under the same Section 120 tax benefits as tuition reimbursement. Employers can make tax-free contributions to individuals' student debt, and that was just permanently put in place. But the one we really want to talk about from an institutional perspective today is Secure 2.0, Section 110 specifically, that allows employers to look at the payments an individual's making on their student debt and say, we're going to take that as if you were making a deferral and we'll match you on that. And this can have huge, wide-ranging impacts because, think about it, I think while there are a lot of economists, again, not to pick on the economists in the room, who will have a lot of different thoughts on what might be the most optimal investing structure, I think the one thing they'll all agree on is time. Time is the best weapon we have to help us save enough. But as I mentioned, individuals with student debt are delaying life choices, saving for retirement, buying a car, by upwards of 8 years, and that's time lost. But the student loan retirement match can allow employers to say, pay down your debts, do the responsible thing, we'll get you started on retirement by providing that match and getting you uplifted. Just from a data perspective, the average qualified student loan payment that we've seen in our database since we launched these programs in 2023, around $3,300 is the average qualified student loan payment. Now there's a wide ranges of different matches that different employers have, but looking at the average, that $3,300 and the amount that an employer can match on it can result into, for just 1 year, $50,000 extra at retirement. And you look at the fact that student loans are typically paid down over 10 to 20 years, that can result in $250,000 to $750,000 in additional retirement benefits, closing that retirement gap. So that's how the student loan retirement match program that has been put in place by the institutions can really help lift and narrow that retirement gap that we're talking about.
Thanks, Michael. John, how is the federal savings match changing in 2027?
Yeah, so first of all, I forgot to say thank you to the Harkin Institute for having me here. And I'm especially excited to talk about this new federal savers match. I mean, when you work in the retirement world, and tax credits are not the most exciting thing, but I have to say the savers match, which is a federal tax credit, is probably the most exciting thing I've seen in federal retirement policy in quite a while. So just a little bit of context, there is an existing federal tax credit for savers, for retirement savers. That's been around for about 25 years. But the issue is that that existing tax credit is what we call non-refundable. That is, It's only good if you have a tax liability. If you don't have a tax liability, you don't get any benefit from the tax credit. And many of the eligible savers, low to moderate income workers, who might be saving into a retirement plan, they often don't have a federal income tax liability. So that kind of tax credit, non-refundable tax credit, is not very useful. And the other issue, and this is true for a lot of tax credits, is that they're not very well known. And according to one survey, less than half of US workers are even aware of this existing retirement savings tax credit, let alone the fact that even if you are aware of it, then you have to claim it and go through all the steps of claiming that. So it's not a very effective tool. So in the most recent federal retirement legislation, a new federal tax credit called the Savers Match was created. This will be a refundable tax credit, which means it will go directly as a payment into your retirement account if you're an eligible retirement saver. And there are some income limits here, and I have to look at my notes to make sure I get this right. But basically, the way it works, it is a matching contribution, so you have to be saving into an eligible retirement account. And it's a 50% match up to a cap of $1,000. So, if you're saving $2,000 into your account, you could get $1,000 from the federal government as a matching contribution. To be eligible for a full or partial match, individuals must earn, and this is based on your tax filing status, so individual filers must earn less than $35,500. And for those filing jointly, the limit is $71,000. So not a very high level of income to get the match. It phases out pretty quickly, but it is a very positive development and a very good change to the existing tax credit. There are a couple of tweaks, and I'm going to mention a couple of things that I hope will change in future legislation. So, for example, you can earn the Savers Match by saving into a wide variety of retirement plans, including Roth accounts or Roth IRAs, but you can't receive the Savers Match into your Roth account. And this is sort of a quirk of the law. And then also, under certain circumstances, if you take money out of your account in the year that you receive the match, there is a clawback mechanism that's fairly punitive and frankly unworkable. That's something else we hope to fix, but I think it's, again, a very positive step in the right direction. I want to go back to a point I made earlier about the existing tax credit, which is not many people know about it today. And I think that's what we're going to need with the Savers Match. If we have a lot of low to moderate income workers who are in retirement plans who are eligible for the Savers Match, I mean people in this room and community groups and financial advisors across the country really have to get the word out to people to say, you're eligible for this matching contribution that can have a big impact on your retirement security. And I think you have a follow-up question down the road about possible impact. So I'll just stop there.
Thank you, John. Okay, Alicia. What is the role of ABLE accounts, and why are these accounts important to financial wellness?
Yeah, well, the role of ABLE accounts, I can't really sum that up because it is really the only way that certain individuals can have any type of account. So I'll kind of go back and break down what an ABLE account is for those who aren't aware. So they are a way for eligible individuals with disabilities to have a savings account or just a bank account in general. It is a way for them to save above the asset limits and protect those federal means-tested benefits. There's a couple stipulations to have them. The onset of a disability had to be prior to the age of 46. That was 26 up until January, well, technically December 31st, but January 1st it switched to 46, which opened the door and really changed the narrative on how ABLE accounts can potentially be used. The other stipulation is you have to be eligible for SSI, SSDI, or have a similarly severe disability. Those two must be met. But the big thing is it's allowing these individuals to either save for the present or save for the future or spend in the present. We have found ABLE accounts are really being used multiple ways. We have, in Iowa, we have a checking account option within these plans. So we find people are using these for day-to-day expenses. I like to use that $2,000 threshold. I run $2,000 more through my bank account a month just to pay my bills and take care of my family. Like, I could not have without having $2,000. I couldn't pay what I need to pay to survive. So it allows people to do that. But then we're also finding, which I think is the really neat thing, we are finding at the national level that people are really are using these to save for retirement. That's not what we had necessarily thought of at the beginning, especially I think that 26 threshold. But now that you have individuals that maybe had been working for a while or entering the workforce for the first time, they have a means to save for that future. Or they have a way for family to pass down funds to them before. A lot of times you would hear in estate planning, grandma and grandpa don't want to leave money to this one child because then it would take away their benefits. This is a way that they can leave it to them and not have to come up with creative different means. So that's where I think we're really seeing the narrative and where it comes to the table is that while we know some people are using these just as like a transactional account, we're seeing that people are splitting them, using part of them as a transactional account and then part of them to save for the future. So I'm really excited as they gain more popularity and they've been around longer, as we continue to see the trends, and hopefully it is a way that people start utilizing for those longer term savings that they would have never had the opportunity to do before.
Okay, good, thank you. You may have touched on this already, Alicia, but right back at you. What are important features of ABLE accounts that our audience needs to keep in mind, and when they consider these, and what is the effective way to use ABLE accounts?
Yeah, so I will say the most popular question I get when I'm presenting on ABLE is, all right, well, what's the catch and where can I spend this money? What can it be used for? So I think that's a narrative, is that it really can be used for a qualified disability expense, which when they wrote the tax law, they did something that you don't see them do very often. I would say they wrote it very broad. They weren't specific on it has to be this type of expense, it has to be this. Very much like 529 education accounts are. They're very specific. It can only be used for X, Y, and Z. I can go find you a specific list. ABLE accounts aren't that way, which is awesome, because it really knows that no one person's disability is like someone else's. So you could save it for a down payment on a house. You could save it for retirement, as I already mentioned. You could be using it for whatever your expenses are. It's really anything that improves your quality of life and is legal. That is the one thing I've been asked about a couple things. Like, that's not federally legal or legal in our state, so no. But as long as it's really anything. So I've heard stories of people who are using it to save to do home improvements. I've heard people who use it so they can take someone out to eat because they've never had that empowerment before. And it's teaching individuals with that tool that if I can use it to do this, I can become independent. And I think we already heard that if someone's saving for one way, it teaches them that they might have means to save for another way, which is going to be impactful and powerful.
Yes, absolutely. All right, we're going to skip to Michael. How is the student loan match helping people save, and where do you see the biggest gains in savings with your research?
Excuse me. That's a great question. And we, as I mentioned earlier, we've been running student loan retirement programs at scale since 2023. And so we've now seen a lot of data looking and collecting at the impact we've seen, whether an increase in participation, increase in people maximizing the match, and that's really where at the top level the impact comes from. That said, we do work with all of our employer clients to help them better understand how can this be impactful for them. And I will say it certainly has a range. I mean, looking at how high the participation in the 401k plan or the other retirement plan is today, looking at the maximization of the match, those will all have differing layers of impact. But regardless of whether we've seen low levels of participation or high levels of participation, we do see a lot of the same overall impacts come into play. On average, across all of our employer clients, we've seen student loan retirement match create a 13% increase in overall participation. That's getting the non-savers off the sideline and started. That's that $50,000 that I talked about. That gets them started with time, compounding, return, to have a better and more secure retirement outcome at the end. In addition to the non-savers, looking at those individuals who aren't fully taking advantage of the benefit their employer is providing today, not fully taking advantage of the match. When we look at that cohort, we typically see that the average under-saving, so unutilization of the match, is around 49%. So they're missing almost half of the match that their employer is providing. When we then go and, again, look at the uplift that we're seeing caused by student loan retirement match across all of our employers, it's a 27% increase in the proportion of the population who have now started taking full utilization of that match, receiving the full benefit from their employer, getting more money put away to, again, grow and overall save for retirement. But that's really just the impact on the employee side. I think it's also important to think about, because we talked about a lot, one of the earlier speakers talked about how benefits is all a balloon. You can squeeze on one side and it goes the other side. So what's the benefit for the employer? When we look at all of our data and compare to the broader industry standards, we see that employers that are offering programs such as this and programs that are more focused on these benefits as a whole, their turnover, which can be one of the biggest costs from an HR department in terms of finding new people to put new employees in seats, the turnover amongst those who are utilizing these programs is 58% lower. So it's no longer just a conversation around what am I doing for my employees, but it's also what am I doing for my own company to help the company save money, encourage people to stay longer, work longer. That's ultimately what we want. We want employees to feel confident. We want employees to feel secure where they are, so they're not looking for the next step and ultimately have that rewarding long-term career.
Thanks, Michael. Sid, who benefits most from emergency savings programs, and what are some of the most impactful results that you see in your research?
Yeah, and great results shared by Michael and Alicia as well. I think that for emergency savings, I just want to talk a little bit about who the audience is, because quite often when we are talking about an individual worker who's saving up for an emergency, there's this painting that you may have, picture in your mind that's it's an hourly individual that's making $15 an hour. And that is certainly the case. I mean, we have tens of thousands of those types of workers. But beyond that, what we've been blown away to see is that especially younger workers who may be carrying that student debt, but more likely also carrying credit card debt, medical debt, folks who are really trying to address immediate financial needs, things like putting down a down payment, put down a security deposit, down payment for a car, like those types of immediate financial goals, they're also saving. So what we typically see in a workforce, across the workforce, is about 40 to 60% voluntary take-up. Now that's really impactful, especially because when we're talking about financial wellness solutions, often we approach it in the old school arena from a strong financial education perspective. The financial education perspective sees utilization rates of 2-3% engagement. Now, that's not the type of outcome that you'd like to generate as an organization, whether you're a financial institution or an employer, because it's just not an effective deployment of resources. So getting folks that are not just saving, like half of your population voluntary participating, but also beyond that, going deep with student loan debt or able accounts, anything else, it is definitely the next move as we are looking at the expectations from employees. So if there's one takeaway that you all should have, it's that let's move beyond financial literacy and education, because knowledge right now is something that we can all take as a commodity. We were talking about it last night during dinner. It is amazing, and I'm sure Michael will talk about AI here in a second as well. It is amazing how we have access to that knowledge. But now we're looking for that automation. Kent, you and I were talking just earlier about the unbanked, right? I think you had a percentage, was it 22% of individuals that were unbanked in Polk County? And that's not even including the underbanked. So now, as we're thinking about the role that employers and other financial institutions can start playing, it's about using what they have as the primary use of an individual's time, right? 8+ hours a day of an individual's time, more than they're dedicating to their own sleep, is going to earning an income. So use that as the wedge to drive some of this automation. Now, okay, people are saving. What are they actually doing? We're seeing on average $211 per month, normalized for different payroll frequencies, that people are putting away for the immediate future. And these are accessible completely unrestricted accounts, right? So people can take out money for whatever they want. In last quarter, we actually saw 38% of withdrawals happen for transportation-related reasons, AKA see gas prices, right? I remember in Q4 of last year, we were looking about something funky that was happening in the DC area because housing and utilities was bumping up. And then we saw 2 months later an article in the Washington Post about how utility prices had spiked because of a water main leakage. And that was impacting people. We were seeing that in our data. So I think that, so on average, we see about 2 to 4 withdrawals. In general, we see 2 to 4 withdrawals from people's emergency savings accounts, and the size of those withdrawals is $326 on average. So this is not as transactional an expense as you'd think. It's typically something a bit larger than a $20 surprise expense, right? And going back to what Michael was saying about the employer side impact, we noticed 4 things. One, and I alluded to this earlier, we started to see a higher utilization of the retirement savings side. Now, I can't attribute it to just the presence of an emergency savings account, or in our individual case, one of the things that we're doing in Sunny Day Fund is we're providing a lot of nudge-based communication to, great, you're building up financial confidence with all this money that you put away. Now let's make sure you're taking advantage of that match that you also have on hand, right? And like nudging that financial, that participation or increased contributions into the 401k. But we have seen that, and fewer loans. 57% at a utility company that we work with in Virginia saw a 57% reduction in their retirement loans and early withdrawals, which is the primary reason that they had rolled out an emergency savings program in the first place. We have also seen roughly a 2 to 3x better retention. So the way that you want to think about this is if the individual, if in that hourly individual level, the turnover rate was 100%, imagine seeing closer to 50% for this organization. And we saw that across our whole platform, right? So if you're an employer, just like what Mike was saying, like being able to see that impact is instrumental. And the last place that we hope to get to is we want to break down this crazy wall that exists between healthcare and wealth, because that is what exists. How many of you, when you look at the benefits you're enrolling in, there's 99 pages on all your healthcare benefits and like 1 page on your retirement benefits, and I'm seeing lots of nods, so you know how painful it is. But these are interconnected. You're a single body, last I checked, but for whatever reason, your eyes and teeth and your body are different, and as is your money, evidently. But these are completely interrelated. So how does this present itself? Well, it's presenting itself in, one, the ability of the individual to pay for preventative health care. So that's called the concept of cost-related non-adherence to prescriptions or any medical procedures that are ordered after a physical, let's just say. But it's also showing up in how an individual is safe at work because of the working memory impact as well. So this is how it's showing up at the individual level as well as the employer level.
Thank you very much. John, what is the expected impact of the new match on retirement savings? And can you discuss the state auto IRA programs?
Sure, and I think the key phrase in your question, Ken, is expected impact. As I said, the new Savers Match will come into effect next year. Savings in 2027 will be eligible for the match, and the match will be paid sometime in 2028. So a lot of what I'm going to say is based on either modeling work or survey work. But we're all very excited to see how this new match will play out. So let me just hit on a few of the impacts that people have been talking about. I think one of the obvious things, hopefully, is that this will boost account balances. And it'll boost account balances for a lot of people. Some research that was done by the Employee Benefits Research Institute found that just looking at tax data, as many as 22 million in the tax year 2018 would have been eligible for the Savers Match if it had been available then, and that there are 69 million tax filers that could have received the match overall that fit the income limits if they had been saving for retirement. So at a minimum, back in 2018, there were 22 million people who were saving for retirement who would have been eligible for the match. That's a lot of people. And then Morningstar did some work to understand what the wealth effects might be, and their findings showed that depending on the behavioral response to the match, would people sort of increase their contributions or take part in retirement plans? But generally speaking, for people looking at age 65 for the Gen Z and millennial cohorts, their wealth would increase anywhere between 8 and 12%, so a not insignificant boost to wealth. So now I just want to talk a little about, as background, about these state auto IRA programs, or also called work and save programs. Professor Ghilarducci talked a little bit about them earlier. And just to recap, these are statewide retirement savings programs. And they exist in 17 states today. And the way they work is that if you're at a private employer that does not have a retirement plan, you would be automatically enrolled into this retirement savings program with the opportunity to opt out at any time. But if you didn't opt out, you would start saving, say, 5% of your pay, and you would get your own individual retirement account. And that would follow you from job to job. And the whole idea is to get people into the savings system and take advantage of payroll deductions to build savings on a regular basis. And, but unlike 401k plans, auto IRAs are not eligible for employer matching contributions. So these are employee-only funded, and this is one of the flaws of the state auto IRAs. I will say I'm much more positive about these programs than Professor Ghilarducci, in the sense that I would not call these emergency savings accounts. They are retirement accounts. You can make withdrawals. According to our survey research we did for one state, only 13% took withdrawals from their IRAs, and 90% of those withdrawals were for emergencies. But over 85% were not taking withdrawals from their accounts. So with that context in mind, we had done a whole bunch of survey work around these programs, and we included some questions on the Savers Match. And we asked workers who did not have a retirement plan at their job if they would be receptive to or be willing to participate in these state auto IRA programs if there was one in their state. And 84% said they were likely to participate in the program. That number grew to 94%, a 10% percentage point increase, when they were informed about the Savers Match. So the Savers Match is a bump on participation, much like a matching contribution on a 401k plan increases participation. Now, for the 16% of those workers who said they were not likely to participate in the retirement plan or in the state auto IRA plan, 52% of those showed increased interest in participation, or at least about learning more about the, showed increased interest about participation after learning about the Savers Match. So I think the Savers Match, whether in the state auto IRAs, in a 401k plan, or other types of retirement savings programs, the Savers Match will have a significant impact on participation. And the other thing, or the last thing I would just say too, is that the Savers Match, because it's targeted at low to moderate income retirement savers, it's going to have a disproportionate effect on workers of color, on Hispanic workers, people who are typically either left out of the system or not making a lot of money, but it will have a big impact on their account balances once it's implemented.
Thanks, John. All right, Sid, back to you. Tell us about the program in Iowa that your organization is working on and how it's designed to support financial wellness for people who make less than 200% of the poverty line.
Yeah, thank you so much. So first of all, a big shout out to Iowa. I feel like you all are very much leading the way in economic mobility, and let me just tell you what economic mobility means to me. Right, so I'm an immigrant to the U.S. My parents, when they came here, they were making minimum wage, and for me to be on a stage talking about this as a policy, it's my American dream come true. And economic mobility to me is as simple as that. It's irrespective of where a person has started in the economic crisis that they may have suffered, for whatever reason it may be, including homelessness. It's the individual belief and capability that they will be able to transition to a better financial life for themselves and for their family, right? We can agree on that, right? Now, right now, in order for a person to be able to do that and do that sustainably, you really need to not just earn a good income, but you need to be able to rely on a combination of public benefits and be able to save so that you can actually confidently be able to take up a higher paying job along the way. So the program that that Iowa is rolling out, the Economic Mobility Account Program, is a new employee benefit that, please take note, any employers that are in the room, as well as that are watching here in Iowa, for any employees that are based in Iowa, you'll be able to offer this as an employee benefit where people can save right out of their paycheck, post-tax deduction, into a brand new savings account. It can happen in less than 30 seconds. And we encourage you as an employer to provide up to a $200 match. It's a very low barrier. The employees will need to put in $50 a month, and the state of Iowa will put in $100 or 50 cents on the dollar what the employer puts in. But as a result of the program, you effectively have a 50 cents on the dollar match into up to $300 for a frontline worker in Iowa. Now this is awesome. If you are starting out, if you're younger, we were just talking to a behavioral health company that has individuals that are making roughly $30,000 per year, and you are looking for a way to perhaps put down a security deposit or buy a car. That's a few $100s that you really need. Well, for a security deposit, a couple $1,000s you need nowadays. But you want to be able to save up for that. And what you now have is an automated and free way as both an employee and an employer to be able to do that. And this is going to be a great program, and hats off to Iowa for leading the way. There's been different variations of this program that have been ideated in Ohio and in Indiana and other places. But I think that the delivery mechanism here in Iowa is going to be extremely strong. Certainly feel free to reach out to us, to me individually, sid@sunnydayfund.com, or we'll have some flyers and you'll be able to find out more. But the most important thing for you to take away is that this is a free program for employers and employees. It's directed for employees who are based in Iowa, where their household income levels are less than 200% at the federal poverty level. Just to give you an idea of what that actually means, depending on the size of the household, that's anywhere from $32K to $55K. And on top of that, please keep in mind that this is not just one or two people in the grand state of Iowa. It's it could be eligible for up to 40% or 2 in 5 people here in the state. So if you're at all curious, please just reach out.
Thank you. Wonderful stuff. Alicia, you're next. What is the best way for Iowa residents to, assess resources about the ABLE program and to help them with opening these accounts?
Yes, this is pretty simple. Well, if you're in the room, you can stop back there. We have a booth. But iable.gov, iable.gov, it has all of our information. We do have an 800 number there as well. I will say we know the biggest resources of getting this out, though, is word of mouth. Just to put it into perspective, approximately 2 years ago, I got lucky if I gave 2 presentations a year. Today I have no staff left in my office that can talk about ABLE because we are out. So that, I think, too, is engaging community partners. But really, if you want to sign up or want to learn, going to iable.gov. We do have an eligibility quiz on there, because that's another one we hear a lot, is that people are like, I don't know if I'm eligible or this person I'm helping is eligible. So that will do it. But also our phone team's great. There are different advisors in the state that will help. You can always stop by the treasurer's office, too. And this has been the only day we've ever not had someone there that could talk about ABLE, but we still would have got you connected.
Great, thank you. John, the Retirement Savings Project at Pew has focused their work on improving access for different groups who do not have employer-based coverage. What do you see as the biggest challenge in this space?
Well, that's a big question for mid-afternoon. So let me I'll break it down quickly. It is a big problem. Teresa's RSAA is one path, and the state auto IRAs are another path, and there are other ideas about improving access. And I think all of these ideas or initiatives are really sort of centered on this idea that you can't have retirement security without access to the retirement saving system or retirement security system. And when we think about that, at least at Pew, and access is only one part of the problem. There's contributions, making sure that enough money is flowing in, and we talked about income streams at the beginning part of the day. But just focusing on the access part of the puzzle, there's really two sides to this. One is the employer side of this. So we know that the payroll systems are the best way to save for retirement because of the regular deductions that come out of the paychecks and flow into the retirement account. So we want to leverage that. The problem is that we have a voluntary employer system, that employers don't have to offer retirement benefits. And quite frankly, it's not really the first benefit that employers think about. In our survey work with small business owners, what are the first benefits that you would have as a business owner? Be health insurance and paid time off. Retirement benefits typically come much later in the life cycle of a firm. So I think there's that issue. But a lot of employers have told us in our focus groups and survey work that they want their employees to be financially secure. They want to provide retirement benefits to their workers. But for the small business owner operating on very thin margins, they feel that they can't afford it. And there's the issue of having to take on the burden of administration and fiduciary responsibility for a retirement plan. So, we don't want to blame the employers, but we still want to try and work with the employer system to leverage that payroll deduction. On the individual side, much like what Dr. Ghilarducci was saying, we're not blaming the individuals here. We often hear people say things like, well, anybody can sign up for an IRA and save into it. But I think what we're talking about is effective access to a retirement savings system that makes it easy for people to save if they're able to save. And that, setting up an IRA and picking out the investment options and, making the contributions, that's a lot for the individual worker. So really trying to make it as easy and seamless as possible through things like automatic enrollment is really the goal here. Just a couple of other issues that I want to flag that I think are very important when we talk about barriers or challenges to access. One is this issue, and I think we've heard it earlier in the day, I'm not sure, it's been a long day, but it's this issue of asset limits, that a number of public assistance programs like SSI, they sort of put a cap on how much assets you can have as an individual and still qualify for benefits. I think SSI is $1,000, I believe. So it's very easy if you start saving for retirement to hit these asset limits and then be kicked off of these programs that you depend on. So I think that's one challenge that I think is really starting to rise up the agenda, at least at the federal level and probably at the state level as well. And I think the other thing is that we just don't, more vaguely or amorphously, we just don't want to do any harm. There are a lot of low-income workers that want to save, but you still are talking about a 5% cut in pay for a lot of these workers. And so we don't want to make people worse off. So we want to make sure that things like emergency savings or access to their assets when they really need it, that's preserved.
Thanks, John. Okay, Michael, from a higher level viewpoint, how are employers doing in supporting financial well-being, and are there opportunities to add to this work?
I think that's a great question, and I do want to take it back because I think Sid made some earlier comments, because Sid with Sunny Day and myself with Canada, we were very much in a similar space of we're this next generational type of benefit. But employers have a hard decision. I'm going to go back to one of the earlier panelists who talked about the balloon reference, and I'm sorry, every time she mentioned that, I was brought back to COVID when, to entertain my daughters, I tried making balloon animals, and it was an utter failure. But they have to make the decisions. It's not an unlimited budget they have. They hold limited resources, and they have to prioritize based on their employees what they think they can accomplish. And there are a lot of changes that are happening. I know for this instance, this past year, we've seen some of the highest increases in healthcare costs that employers were struggling with. I heard rumors of some employers having to increase healthcare costs, payments of upwards of 70% in a single year. We know there's hard decisions, but what we're also hearing and seeing a lot from employers is really the willingness to move into what I would call next generational types of benefits. And that's because they see the impact on their employees' financial stress. And Sid knows a lot of these statistics really well, but employees who are financially stressed are 5 times more likely to be distracted while at work. I think most of us can probably raise our hand. How many of you had during the workday, instead of working on whatever your email you're supposed to send out, flipped over to your bank account to check, hey, do I have to pay my credit card? I think everyone's done that once or twice. And I have seen studies that have tried to total that number and figured it's almost a month of work hours or month of man hours that are lost in a year to individuals being financially distracted. But it's not just about the distraction. That same financial stress actually increases absenteeism in the workplace by 34%. So it has a huge impact on the employers by not really trying to address, and which is why we're seeing a lot of employers across the ecosystem try to provide more next generational benefits, which I want to jump into with tagging onto what Sid said in a second. But it's also important to know that employees are asking for this. Employees are wanting this. 50% of employees expect their employers to provide some form of financial advice. And I think that's partially due to the institution we've built. We've built here in the United States an institution where healthcare is provided through the employer. I think the stat we heard earlier today was 59% of individuals receive healthcare through their employer. They receive retirement benefits in addition to Social Security through their employers now. That's where they are expecting to get financial advice from, particularly because we know in the advisor world, not all advisors work with below the 90%. They were running their business, they're focused on the 10% and above of individuals to help. But beyond that 50% of individuals who expect it, we're actually seeing right now 26% are actively going in and engaging. They're actively going and using different tools and solutions that their employers can provide. And this is where I come to what Sid had talked about earlier. Talking about, we've provided financial education. That's been done, that's been out there. The next, what he said specifically was the next we need to do is automation, and I would go one step further in terms of the next generation types of benefits that Sunny Day and Candidly provide. It's not just the automation, it's the personalization, and it's the action. But beyond that, it's then taking them to the next step that they may not even know about. That's why at Candidly, from a next generation perspective, we have driven and dived head on into building new platforms that are AI focused to take in information the individual's giving to us. Not just give them information, but have a conversation about their student debt, their planning for college, their optimization of other benefits. Because with all of that, we can drive better utilization and more actionability with the employers, and that's where the employers are truly starting to see benefits. For example, our newest platform, which includes our AI module called Kate, when we look at the conversations the employees are having, some are going back and having 26 back and forths, really trying to understand what's going on. But ultimately, we're seeing a 70% increase in engagement with the employees who are actually going down into those next generation benefits and taking action. And that's a huge uplift, and that's what employers are seeing and really trying to dive into. Because ultimately, in the end, for them, it does result in more confident employees. We see an 83% increase in confidence amongst the employees. That's going to reduce that financial stress impact. That's going to reduce that absenteeism. That's going to reduce the distraction, the turnover. And even from just a dollars basis, when they go through our platform, leveraging those tools, leveraging Kate to find better solutions, we've on average helped individuals save $350 per month on their student debt or saving for retirement, which can have wide-ranging impacts, which when you come to Candidly as a whole, our company has to date driven over $2 billion in impacts for individuals, leveraging what the employers are coming to. And I will say a word that my daughters will throw around, FOMO, but I'll just call it for everyone else here, fear of missing out. Employers are starting to actively look at this more. Right now, 42% of employers have said they are looking at adding these types of benefits this year or next year, and we only expect that to increase. That said, we do know the benefit space can be slow moving. How long have we been talking about retirement income? How long have we been talking about the auto escalation, auto enrollment? It takes time in this space to adopt it. But I think that's also a good thing because time leads to long-term stronger results.
For the behavioral economists in the room, FOMO equals loss aversion.
Okay, I think we have one last, unless Raina, do we have time for one last round? Okay. All right, so as a closing message before the Q&A from the audience, please tell us one thing that makes you optimistic about improving financial well-being and retirement security. And I'll just start with Sid.
Well, I am very much an optimist. I mean, think about the name of our company, right? It's not the rainy day fund, it's the sunny day fund. People like to lead with hope. It's just the framing of the words matters a lot. There's twice as likely to, they save twice as much more when you lead with that hope. And the good news is it's not just, it's very much like a field of dreams movement for us, right? Because what we've seen is that when the opportunity is in front of individuals and when we affirmatively ask the question, people do say yes. Like, for example, in open enrollment, if you're asking the question, would you like to save for emergencies? That's closing the intent to action gap, and immediately people are saying yes. This is not even automatic enrollment. So I am very optimistic because like our team, our employers, they are seeing this thing that they've dreamed about for a very long time, and they're just seeing it manifest in a slightly different way.
Okay, any other comments?
Going down the line?
Yeah,
All right, so
sure.
I'll go next. I'd say what excites me most is its scalability and utilization. I think from a perspective of just giving people advice, it's been hard in the past. That's why we've relied on financial education, but tools and software and capabilities are available to us now, whether it be data-driven analysis, AI, all of that, even interconnections within the industry where data is more easily able to move back and forth. That allows us to provide advice and guidance at scale in ways that we never could, allowing people to actually make better decisions on saving for retirement, saving in an ESOP, 401k versus IRA versus I have healthcare plans, I have IDI insurance. All of these are in the future of what's happening, and that's what excites me the most. We're at the front edge of what I would call truly unified benefit systems, because right now they're very interspersed and individuals have trouble making decisions. And that's why I'm excited about the conversations that candidly have with the employees who come to our platform raising their hand saying, I need help, and really deliver long-term financial wealth advice that helps them crush their debt and build long-term wellness.
Wonderful.
I'll mention two things. I mean, one is already talked about, which is the Savers Match. And the fact that millions of Americans are going to get a boost to their retirement savings beginning in 2028, that's just huge. If you're a tax nerd, you know that the tax code is skewed towards the upper income groups. The fact that lower income workers are going to get a direct payment into their retirement accounts, that should get you excited. I mean, I think that's been a positive public policy development. But just more broadly, Teresa talked about the RSAA, there's the state auto IRAs, there's other proposals in Congress. I think what makes me feel optimistic is there's a lot of interest in these sort of more meatier, big impact issues like expanding access, boosting accounts, and it's bipartisan.
Yeah.
And I think that makes me feel very good. I mean, we don't know what it's going to look like at the end of the day, but I think we're headed in the right direction after a lot of just rearranging the deck chairs on a sinking ship.
I'd say that for ABLE, it's that people have a means. They can save above, before there was zero way to save for retirement. It wasn't an option. You had to drain your retirement to get the benefits you needed. Now you have a way to do it, and by increasing that 26 to 46, millions more across the country became eligible. And I think one of the things that make me the most optimistic is that I continue to see it be part of the conversation at the federal level. The fact that they contemplated ABLE when they created Trump accounts, I did not expect that. That shocked me, that they even thought about a way to not make this be the Trump account be something that was going to penalize these individuals once they got control of it. So that makes me very optimistic, and that we're going to continue to see them expand, which will allow people to work and allow people to save and to become more financially secure in their future.
Okay. We did get two questions from the audience. This one for, let's see, Alicia. If I can read it. I know take up of, I'm just reading what it says. ABLE accounts has been really low nationally. Is that the case in Iowa too? And how do you go about trying to increase awareness?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't remember if it was when I talked to you guys or if I had it with someone else. The pickup has been very slow with ABLE. I did share how we've started to see an increase. I will say we get some stats. We're part of the National Able Alliance, so I don't have this for everyone, but I have it within Iowa. Our uptick has been, we have 5% of the eligible population that are saving in ABLE accounts. That makes me sad. However, what makes me happy is that other states are around 1. We are the highest state of any of the states for that percentage, which is crazy to me. So I'm hopeful that we'll continue to see that uptick. The conversations I'm now having when I go out are not, what is this? Or I don't trust the government. It's now asking me more sophisticated questions like, what type of investments? How do I save for the long term and save for today? How now I can get a promotion at work because I have a means to save. So the uptick is still slow, I'm not going to deny that, but I do think we're sitting better in Iowa, and I'm hoping that we can continue to do that.
You got one more.
All right.
Concerning ABLE accounts, is there a way that employers could contribute to accounts, or account holders can set up automatic distributions similar to other employer-offered retirement savings plans?
Absolutely, that's one of my favorite questions.
right.
Yep, I would love employers. If there's any employers that would like to set that up, talk to us. But yes, employers can do it. You can. So as long as an employee is not contributing to a defined retirement account, they can save even more in ABLE because there are some restrictions, but they can save more, and employers can match. We at ABLE don't care where the contributions come from. We encourage it. It is very similar to how a contribution would be counted for education reimbursement. It's a fringe benefit. We have letters from the IRS that say that. So it is a benefit to the employer, and then obviously a really big benefit to the employee. In my perfect world, if you're offering a match for retirement and that employee isn't eligible, offer it to their ABLE account. Or if you're offering a match to, let's say, 529, offer ABLE. It doesn't cost the employer anything more, and just offering that, you don't know who someone is supporting at home. So while the employee might not be the one, it could be someone they're supporting or someone that they're thinking about all the time. And to the point that's been made, probably taken away from their productivity at work because they're trying to decide how they're going to plan for the future for this individual that might not be able to for themselves.
Okay, that's all we have. Thank you very much.